Hey clowns, welcome to Crimelia Street. I'm Sam.
And I'm Tori, and tonight we are going to Canada for this story. Back to Sam's roots, but I think the other side of Canada, maybe? I'm real bad
The West
with
Coast?
Nope, same side then.
Oh, okay, cool.
BC, Vancouver.
Okay, yeah.
Are those your
The
parts?
West Coaster. No, yeah, those are not my old stomping grounds. I'm on the East Coast, Toronto side, yeah.
Gosh, I cannot get it together. So Vancouver is the West Coast? Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. Well, that's where we're going.
All right, beautiful city.
Do you have any idea what this one might be based on the city? I'm curious.
I don't. I'm
Okay.
excited though.
So this one is very well known. It's one that really intrigued me when I first started getting into true crime. And it is Robert Pickton, the pig farmer. Have you heard of it?
I think I have, but I'm not
Okay.
all the deets, just the basic stuff.
It's brutal. It's pretty terribly awful. So this is a story that takes place in Canada near Vancouver. It's a story of a marginalized community being overlooked. Never heard that story before. Most of the victims were sex workers and did have drug addictions. So unfortunately, the police took way too fucking long to give any credit to like what was going on. Had they taken action sooner, many people's lives could have been saved. And not even just the police, like had some of the people who knew what was going on to like come out sooner, a lot of women would have been saved. So it's just like super tragic the way that everything played out. So the Pictons, they lived in Port Coquitlam, which it's near Vancouver. They owned a pig farm. They were very unhygienic people. The area that they lived in, like the Pictons were at the bottom of this hill, and up at the top of the hill was this kind of mental health facility. And so a lot of doctors lived in the area, and the doctors' children went to school with the farmers who lived like lower down on the hill. But even amongst the farmers, the Picton children were teased for being the most unhygienic children. The whole family was just really gross, honestly. They would just let pigs in the house, feces everywhere. It was a bit of a mess over there.
Interesting.
This did end up being Canada's most expensive homicide investigation. I'm pretty sure still to date.
Wow. Yikes.
Most of my information came from the book called On the Farm by Stevie Cameron, and then also the podcast Rotten Mango by Stephanie Sue, which is a true crime podcast. And I think she got most of her information from the book as well. So we'll just kind of jump right in. February 23rd, 1995, someone finds a skull in a slough, which is like a creek. This person didn't love cops and was nervous to call the cops initially. Plus, he had shopping and bingo to get to that night. So,
As one
priorities. Priorities. Can't miss that. So he did end up the next day kind of flagging down a cop that was driving by and telling them about the half of a skull that he found. The skull was in a bit of a strange condition. It was split in half vertically, so like kind of from the forehead down, like through the mouth. There was no sign of the other half of the skull. Investigators determined that it hadn't been there for too long because it still had some flesh attached to it, and animals would have eaten away at the flesh if it had been there for very long. The area was not treated as a crime scene because investigators decided that it was probably an Indian burial ground that had been unearthed, which literally doesn't make sense because they also determined that the skull wasn't in the water for that long.
Right. Like, and if it was, they could do like research, like the people are interested in that kind of thing. You have to preserve those areas anyway. So come on.
Actually, that's a great point. Right. An RCMP investigator in Vancouver, he looked at the skull and said that it had looked as if it had been cut in half with an electric saw, and he thought that it was a murder victim. Forensic pathologist James Ferris also looked at the skull, determined it was from a woman in her mid-20s. She had died between 12 and 24 months earlier, so probably not a Native American burial. He was sure that the skull had been in the water for only a couple of weeks because there was something called adipose sear present on the skull, which is it's kind of like a fatty like wax almost that will develop on remains if they're in like moist, like cold, damp ground. So it couldn't have been in the water. It had to have been buried or in a cellar or something like that. And then there was also still like flesh on it that the animals hadn't eaten away at. The investigators were sure that they would eventually find more body pieces. The skull, they determined, had been cut by someone who knew how to cut through bones, but not a medical cut, because it was a very clean cut, but it wasn't like completely even like a medical cut would have been. Another forensic anthropologist at the University of Toronto tried to recreate the face and determined that this person was a Native American with European descent. The person could not be linked to any missing persons report. The skull was determined to be a Jane Doe and wasn't ID'd for another 7 years after being found in 1995. So, jumping into Robert Pickton, who he was, who his family was. Robert Pickton was one of 3 siblings. He had a sibling named Linda and a sibling named David. Robert was born October 24th, 1994, and I believe he was the middle child. He was born with his umbilical cord wrapped around his neck, and his parents wondered later if that caused brain damage. And his parents also never knew about like his crimes in the end. Interesting, they thought that.
Right. Huh.
Interesting tidbit. But he did have a great memory. They grew up, it was strange because they did have a lot of money and a lot of assets, but they lived very poorly still. He lifted up he remembers lifting up the floorboard as a child to get water from the spring under his house, because they had no running water in the house. The family home was gross. Animals were in and out of it. Feces were everywhere. The kids had to do a lot of farm work as children. They always stunk and got called Piggy by the neighbors and locals. Louise, the children's mother, understood the importance for the girl Linda to be socialized, but not for the boys. So the boys would just like go play in the woods and really didn't like develop very good like social habits. Robert had trouble in school. He was held back in 2nd grade, but by his second time through 2nd grade, he was determined to be like average. He wasn't like below level anymore, but he did end up in special education for some reason throughout the rest of his school career. I think he just kind of was stuck in it after 2nd grade. The mother, Louise, was very strange. She always wore rubber boots like in the house all the time. She didn't care for her teeth at all, so she lost them all. And people like could not understand her at all when she was talking. She also lost all of the hair on her head and would just kind of she had like a couple little scrags and just wear like a little handkerchief kind of covering it all. Robert was very attached to his mother, which is a little bit of an interesting detail. I feel like you see that often in serial killer cases. Leonard was the father. He was abusive towards the kids, but also pretty hands-off. He ended up like being pretty sickly throughout a lot of the children's, like throughout his later life and a lot of the children's life. So he was pretty hands-off, and Louise was more so the one running things. Linda, the sister of the siblings, was different than the 2 boys. She was clean. After a certain point, she like kept her distance from the family. Robert ran the pig business, and Dave, who was Robert's brother, was always out doing construction. Leonard, the dad, ended up growing old and couldn't care for the farm, so Louise like took over running everything. Linda did leave after 8th grade and went to live with other relatives, so she kind of in 8th grade like can you imagine 8th grade? You're like, fuck these people, my family.
I'm out of here. I mean, I kind of don't blame her.
Yeah. And she seemed to have like some touch of like just normalness, probably because she was socialized more and such. But yeah, she got the fuck out, so good for you, Linda. Robert had an irrational fear of showers growing up, which kind of tracks. There was no shower on the property as well, so the kids would only bathe like once a week, and they were doing like all these farm chores. Like they would come home from school like on their lunch break and have to like take care of the animals and then go back to school. They'd wake up, take care of the animals, go to school, come home lunch, take care of the animals, go to school, come home after, take care of the animals. So a lot of work, dirty, no showers.
And pigs just running throughout the house, so perfect.
Right. Robert ended up dropping out of high school 1 year in as a freshman because of a nudie pin. Do you know what that is? I didn't. Nudie pin.
No.
It's like I guess a pin that if you flip it upside down, like you see like a naked girl. It's like a little depiction. I don't know if it's a drawing or what, but like you flip it upside down and you can see a naked girl or something. It sounds like
So he's a little freak.
sounds
No,
like
just
very
kidding, I
high
mean.
school.
Yeah.
But he ended up getting in a fight with like the principal over that and was like, whatever, I'll just drop out. The mom was cool with that because he could work on the farm more. Lisa Yeltz ended up being like a longtime friend of the family, but she lived nearby. And she'll come up in the story kind of off and on. Robert began an apprenticeship as a meat cutter, but he wasn't very enthusiastic about it at the time. He wasn't great at conversing with people. He would kind of just use aphorisms to like answer people, but he wouldn't really listen to what they're saying.
Right. Just like a common little quip or something.
Yes. His brother Dave was always getting into trouble. This is awful. October 17th, 1967, Dave Pickton, the brother, ran into a 14-year-old boy, Tim Barrett, with his vehicle. No one knows for sure why, like if he was drinking or driving or speeding or what, but we do know that he hit Tim Barrett. And Tim was walking just on the way to see one of his friends. And Tim's father worked for the Royal Canadian Air Force. Tim's parents called Tim's friend's house, who he was on the way to see, looking for him, and no one knew where Tim was. Tim's father found Tim's shoe on the road and then went and looked in the ditch and found Tim deceased in the ditch. Mr. Barrett practically collapsed when he found his son. Dave knew what he had done. It wasn't like he hit Tim and didn't know. He hit Tim, knew what he did, went home. Dave's parents, Louise and Leonard, said, you got to go get this car fixed right now because you just hit that kid. So Dave went to the mechanic. Meanwhile, while Dave's going to the mechanic, Louise, the mom, went to the scene of the accident, dragged him off the road, and placed him in the ditch. Dave told the mechanic while he was there that they were building a new barn and like timber had fallen on the truck and that's what the accident was from. The mechanic found it really strange that they were in such a rush it was like 7 p.m. He's like, why are you in such a rush to fix this? And he was like, I need you to just fix it now. The next morning, the mechanic heard about Tim being hit and called the RCMP about the truck repair. An autopsy determined that Tim actually did not succumb to his injuries from the accident hit, but he drowned in the water in the ditch. So, yeah.
Wow. That's terrible, dude.
How fucked up, right? Louise came and killed this little boy.
Dude, that's awful.
It's crazy. This story is so fucked up. Dave ended up being charged in juvenile court, not for murder, not for manslaughter. I don't know the Canadian charges, but nothing like that, nothing similar. He was charged with failing to remain at the scene of an accident on December 19th, 1967. There were rumors about Louise's involvement, but she was never charged and nothing ever came of her actions. He was on indefinite probation and his driver's license was suspended until he was 21. Louise even told one of her son's friends what she did and threatened him that if he ever told anyone, she would kill him as well. Many years later, Robert told Lisa Yeltz, who was like that family friend that I mentioned, and that's how we know what happened now. Dave, the brother, ends up working in construction and demolition and in the topsoil industry, which I guess is like selling soil. Is kind of what I was able to determine about it. And then Robert continues his meat apprenticeship, and doing the hog and cattle butchering on the farm, sometimes up to 24 animals a day, which is crazy.
Like, how many animals do you have?
Oh, they had a lot. At one point, they had a piggery that burnt down and 600 pigs died. So they had,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, they had a lot of livestock. Damn. Robert grew up super awkward with girls, but his brother Dave wasn't, and they were both equally disgusting. I guess Dave just had more charm.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Still stinky though.
Still stinky. Like people would say they would like get in one of their cars and like almost throw up. The smell was so bad.
Dude, I cannot imagine. Oh my god.
Robert enjoyed collecting pen pals. He made a specific pen pal, Connie Anderson, who he really was fond of, who lived in Pontiac, Michigan. Robert traveled to America, did like the whole America road trip thing, and went to see her in 1974. It was the first holiday he ever took from the farm. He got drunk for the first and last time ever the night before he left, and he ended up getting engaged to Connie Anderson when he went to see her, but neither would move towards each other, so it ended up fizzling out. He decided to get into horses, and he abandoned his meat cutting apprenticeship, and he really loved his horse Goldie. The apprenticeship he quit when he was only 6 months away from finishing the 7-year apprenticeship, which is kind of crazy. You put 6.5 years in it, like maybe just kind of wrap it up. He didn't want to anymore. He did regret that later, but he just wanted to move back to the farm, but he still needed a job that paid, so he started driving a truck. Leonard, the father, got cancer and died at 91 on January 1st, 1978. Louise, the mom, also got sick eventually and was totally dependent on Robert towards the end, and she died April 1st, 1979 at 67 years old, so a year later after the dad. I think her health decline was much slower too. The dad had been declining for a long time, and then her decline was pretty quick. So she was again running the show until the dad passed away, and then she died very quickly and kind of declined very quickly after that. If the dad had passed away first, he had the estate split up pretty evenly between the children. The mother also had it split up kind of evenly throughout the children, except for the fact that Linda and Dave were able to access their inheritance immediately, but for some reason Robert was not able to access his until he was 40. So he was kind of trapped on the farm, and he felt betrayed by his mom because, again, he had this, like, he was very close with his mom. Robert would use Dave's backhoes because he had all this equipment from construction and the topsoil industry. So Robert would use Dave's backhoes and would dig holes to dump unwanted pieces of animals like bones, skin, and scrap meat. There was a girl who used to board her horse on the Pickton farm who came by the Pickton's house just to say hey one time. Like, I think it was after she had been done boarding, but she was just visiting them. And she walked up on Robert filling a large hole in the back corner of the property. He was kind of like frantically trying to cover up the hole, and he said that he was burying a big pig when she walked up, and she found that kind of odd and frightening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dave, the brother, admired the local Hells Angels, and he and Robert began running a chop shop on their farm. They would just bury the stolen cars. As an ecologist, I don't love that. I don't think it's the proper way. I'm not sure. Maybe. I don't think so. Robert was overseeing the farm, and he would hire teenage boys to like look after the pigs and do the farm work, but he never paid them. He would just intimidate them and like then try to be their friends, and then like intimidate them and kind of go back and forth with this like power struggle. Gross. The bikers convinced the boys to steal cars. One of the boys eventually got arrested stealing the cars and tipped the cops off that they were running a chop shop there. The cops did nothing.
Jeez.
Dave brought Kathy, one of his girlfriends, into Robert's room one day before Robert should have been home, and Robert ended up walking in on them and was very angry. He told Dave if he ever brings her in there again, he'll kill her. And then Kathy stopped going to the farm. Good on you, girl.
Yes.
Get the fuck away. Sandy Humany, one of Dave's exes, who previously worked for Dave, returned to work for Dave in 1986, and she drove a gravel truck for Dave. She had to hire a babysitter because she was working such long hours, and they went on some family trip, and then shortly after that, the babysitter disappeared and was never seen again. Dave's current girlfriend, Kathy, reported her disappearance. Wait for it. The cops did nothing.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. They did not even interview the Picktons. Like, literally where this woman was living. Weird. They did not even go there and interview and be like, oh, hey, have you guys been missing this person?
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely
This is crazy. Yeah.
In the early 80s, Robert Pickton had started cruising the downtown Eastside in Vancouver, it's kind of like the Skid Row of Vancouver. There's just a lot of sex work and drug usage and homelessness, and it's just kind of where people in poverty or like out on their luck or vulnerable people in the population end up at. He would drop off animal waste at a rendering plant there and then go like cruise up and down the streets in downtown Eastside afterwards. When he couldn't make it to the rendering plant, he would arrange for someone to come pick up the animal remains, and they would be in barrels. One of the drivers that picked up Robert's barrels noticed that the meat inside was in large hunks and black or charred, which he found really strange because most farmers try to get all the meat off, so there usually isn't like large hunks of meat in there. In the 80s, so many women's bodies started turning up that the RCMP was starting to feel pressure, unfortunately.
Jeez. Finally.
Well,
fine. I spoke too soon.
Well, hold on. Yeah. Now remember, this is the early 80s we're talking about. So they put together a task force. They investigated 17 missing women cases from 1981. They didn't have enough evidence to charge anyone, so they disbanded the special team in 1989. 8 years, 17 cases, nothing. Men continued to go missing, though. Police were doing nothing, but journalists Pemberton and Hall kept writing about the missing women and the killed women. They raised questions to the RCMP of a serial killer, and the RCMP said, no way. Couldn't be. Couldn't be.
Yeah. They're just on vacation somewhere, you know.
Their whole thing throughout this whole case is like, oh, well, these women are just going to work other streets or they're just going somewhere else. But like a lot of these women's families are like, no, they've never not kept in touch with us.
That's just crazy that they just didn't care. Like, they're literally not doing their jobs. Like, you would think that they would be all over it because...
Like, literally, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Teresa Ann Williams disappeared. She was 15 years old and a mother of 2. She ran away when she was 13 and went to the downtown East Side. She vanished July 21st, 1988. They did eventually find a leg bone in a park near that reduction facility that he would go to. And they weren't able to ID it until many years later, but they eventually did ID it. Many women began spotting for each other because they're starting to, get really freaked out that so many women, so many of their friends are just disappearing. And they would report missing people and get license plates and stuff like as women were going away with Tricks or Johns. They would get license plates and car descriptions, which I love that. Like,
yeah, doing more work than
right?
The cops.
And they were giving this information to the cops.
Oh my gosh.
Do you want to know what the cops did with it? Nothing?
Yep. There we go.
By 1991, so we're a decade later now, the RCMP brought in criminal profilers, which was kind of like a new brand of cop at the time. This profiler that they brought in was one of the most famous profilers and one of the first profilers. They brought him in. He was 100% underappreciated. Here they didn't like him. They thought that like what he did was a joke, whereas he was getting all this hype in the US because he was solving cases. So he was like really good at profiling serial killers, but they didn't want to use him. By the 90s, the Pickton farm looked like a dump because they had so many businesses going on. They were doing the chop shop, they were burying cars, they were selling the soil off the land, just like tearing the soil up. It looked like a shit show over there. Dave sold contaminated soil. It had heavy metals and other contaminants from previous fossil fuel burning. And they would just bury diesel trucks on the property. So now that, I am pretty sure, is not the right way to do it.
Yikes, yeah.
15 women disappeared from 1978 to 1993. Several other women were murdered during the same time, but their bodies had been found, so it's probably not connected to Robert Pickton. But again, so many missing and murdered women, nothing being done.
That is, yeah, like how do you just not care?
Astonishing,
right.
Because they didn't even see them as people, I think. It's so crazy.
Right. Like not one person in the entire department. Not one.
Well, yeah, later there were like a couple of champions, but the higher ups wouldn't let them do anything pretty much. So But I don't know if there were any champions at this point. Lee Minor was a prostitute and addict, grew up in a close-knit family. She was a twin. She experimented with drugs in her teens. Her father died of a heart attack in 1975. She fell in love and married a good man and was happy. Her husband suffered from depression, shot himself in their apartment, and died in her arms. So she became a heroin addict after that, which, like, understandable.
Oh my gosh.
I would
Jesus
say.
Christ. Yeah.
She had a little girl who was 2 years old. Aaron and Lee's mother raised the child because she was addicted to drugs at the time. Lee ended up moving to Vancouver to be closer with their daughter in the early 1990s. Drug use had taken over her life. She moved to downtown Eastside and turned into a sex work to support her habit. They didn't hear from her on Christmas, and then February 24th, 1994, Aaron's mother went to Vancouver to look for her, went to the police and filed a missing persons report. Nothing happened.
Yeah, but I was like, I can see where this is going.
Nothing happened. The police at this time were also cutting staff, so that's good timing. Lee's twin sister, Leslie, died in a car accident about 10 months later, which is just like,
Oh my gosh.
I know. 17 women between 1979 and 1994 went missing, which were normal numbers for the district at that time. Okay.
Guess because of this guy, right? It's like, oh yeah, people go missing all the time like this.
Right.
Because of him.
There were, like, I do think not all of these were contributed to Robert. A lot of them were, or are suspected, but I think a lot of it too is just like so many women are going missing and there's literally being no action taken.
Yeah, nothing's being done.
In 1995, 5 women went missing. Dorothy Ann Spence, who was 33 when she went missing, July 30th, 1995, one of 9 children. She was a part of a Native family. She had a sister, Rebecca, who was 10 years younger, who was living with her, and they had the same birthday. She was a great cook, also suffered from drug addiction. People said she was super caring and funny, and she was not the type to leave and not tell anyone. Diane Melnick, 20 years old when she went missing, December 27th, 1999. She had a very normal upbringing, went to private school, ended up getting involved in drugs, and went missing from downtown Eastside. She had been arrested for shoplifting and fraud, and when she didn't show up for her court date in August, I believe is when they realized that she was missing. She had actually, this is the crazy part, she had inherited a lot of money, but she didn't know yet. And yeah, she went missing before she found out that someone had passed away and left her money. Ronald McCauley was a prime suspect for some time in the murders and the missing women. He was arrested and on parole when he tried to kill a prostitute, but DNA ended up proving that he was not the guy. The Green River killer was also a suspect because I think he was in Seattle, if I'm remembering correctly. And they weren't sure if he had gone up. Makes sense, West Coast. If he had gone up to Vancouver at all before he was caught. They suspected he had killed 45 women by 1985, but DNA could not connect him to these cases either. Robert Pickton was also a suspect. They ran his DNA for the Mission Agassiz Mountain murders, and the DNA didn't match. So he had been moved down the suspect list. And I think that he just wasn't involved in those ones specifically. And they were kind of lumping all of these together at the time.
Dang.
Yeah. So Ken Rosmos was the profiler that I was telling you about, no one really gave him the credit that was due. He was a globally sought after profiler. He was the first in the world, and shamed and humiliated by his own task force with the RCMP. And they didn't use him for this case, even though he kind of was asking to be on this case.
Right.
End of March, early April 1990, Shelley Morrison, which is not her real name, spotted Frances Young, one of her favorite customers. I think so. Shelley Morrison was a sex worker. She had just finished her vocational program and was getting her life back on track. She had a criminal boyfriend who kept her in drugs and prostitution. Shelley hoped Fran was done with her boyfriend so that she could convince Fran to get away from him pretty much and get her life on track. Fran ended up paying for items at the store that Shelley worked at with a check, and the manager didn't want to allow her to pay with the check, but Shelley vouched for her, and the manager said, well, if the check doesn't clear, then you have to cover it for her. So the check bounced, and Shelley called Fran. Fran came back with a $100 bill the next day to give to the manager, but the manager wouldn't take the $100 bill because they didn't take $100 bills at the time. You know how places used to do that, where because they thought it was like counterfeit and stuff.
Right.
So the manager wouldn't take it. She said she'd come back the next day with smaller bills, and she was never seen again. She was finally reported missing April 9th, 1996. 4 women went missing in 1996. Tracy Bouillon almost became the 5th. Robert solicited Tracy Bouillon. As she was getting ready to leave, Robert pulls out a knife and accuses her of stealing his wallet. She pushed him, and he cut 2 buttons off her shirt. She leaves the trailer. He comes out with her purse and drives her back to the downtown Eastside. Just like offers her a ride, drives her back. On the way back, he was chatting to her about how he loves helping working girls kick their habits, but if they do go back, they don't deserve to live. So pretty much saying, like, if they go back to drugs, like, they don't deserve to live.
Gosh. Ew.
Yeah, he's such a gross person. Robert and Lisa became friends. They didn't have, like, a sexual relationship at all. She was one of the few people that could tell him he needed a bath, and he would actually take one. The Picktons would have chicken fights on the farm. This was around the time that like all the Hells Angels were hanging out on the farm and they were running the chop shop. They would also have chicken fights. Robert wouldn't let the men who were betting talk to the women who were his friends because they were pretty much harassing the women. So he would kind of protect the women who were his friends, which is interesting. Robert and Pat Casanova were slaughtering animals together, and they ended up spending a lot of time together. Food inspectors came out to the farm from time to time and would close the farm down for weeks at a time because of sanitation reasons. But then I guess there was like a need for meat, and they would just allow them to open back up with like the sanitation measures not quite being met. Robert and Pat Casanova would go to the Astoria hotel bar, which is in the downtown East Side. Lisa felt like Robert reminded her of Ed Gein. I can't say. I don't think I would hang out with Ed Gein.
Right, yeah, not someone
who I thought reminded me of them.
Yeah.
After knowing what Ed Gein did. Lisa did become uneasy about things, though, about things that Robert and Ed Gein had in common. And then I have in caps here, the real profiler.
Right.
But the other guy was a real profiler, too. They just wouldn't let him. They ended up having this thing called the Piggy's Palace on the farm, which was a nonprofit, legit nonprofit. And I think it was called like Piggy's Palace Good Times Society was like the official business name. But they built like a dance hall and would just have these crazy like rager parties with the Hells Angels. Lisa Yeltz worked there as a waitress and complained that Dave wouldn't pay her enough.
Piggy's Palace?
Good Times Society.
Piggy's Good Times Society. All right.
Janie Henry went missing June 28th, 1997. In 1997, Marie Laura Lalaverte, 48 years old, Native woman. It's crazy, like, the age doesn't seem to be a thing for him at all. He goes from, like, 15 to 48, I mean, all over the board with age. She went missing New Year's Day, 1997. She wasn't reported missing until March 8th, 2002. There's very little information known about her. Stephanie Lane, 10 days later, disappeared near East Hastings Street, which is in downtown East Side. She was 20 years old, part Native, part Black. People said she was beautiful. She was an excellent student, but fell in with a bad crowd. January 11th, 1997, she used a calling card to make a call, and she was never heard from again after that. The mom searched for her daughter in the downtown East Side, but never with any luck. February 14th, 1997, same day that they had the women of the downtown East Side started doing this march for the missing women every Valentine's Day. So this same day, as the annual march was going on, Sharon Evelyn Ward went missing. She was a tiny white woman with an elfin face, is how people described her, which it just sounds adorable. Yeah. She was 29 years old. Her mother was the last person she had contact with, and she left a message and a phone number for her mom and said she needed to speak with her mom and it was important. The mom tried the phone number multiple times over the next few days, but there was no answer. She It said she stormed out of the house after an argument with her boyfriend, but the phone call was the last contact anyone has had with her. She was also had substance abuse issues, but she did always keep in touch with her family. So it was strange when she didn't. Sarah Ellis was seen for the last time in March 1997. She had a best friend, Maggie Giselle. She was 25 years at the time. She lived in the Vernon Rooms, which a lot of these women lived at. It was an apartment complex on, I want to say it was on East Hastings Streets, but it was definitely in the downtown East Side. Maggie, her best friend, started doing drugs at 14 and being pimped, but she had recently broke her addiction and had gotten clean and was trying to help Kara do the same. Kara worked as a prostitute since she was 13 years old, but never lost touch with her family. She kept everyone laughing and loved to play with the kids in the family. She disappeared March 10th, 1997. Her family reported her missing August 1997 because they didn't realize for some time that she was missing. It was Kara's brother's wife who reported Kara missing. She spoke with the officers for about an hour at the station as they interviewed her while they were seemingly making up a missing persons report. But they never filed the report or did anything with this information. Their excuse was because she hadn't married the brother yet at the time that she made the report, so she wasn't family. So family, if she's not actual family, she can't make a missing persons report. But it's like, why sit down with her and talk to her for an hour?
Right.
Like, y'all fumbled.
Yeah, that's so frustrating.
I have in all caps here, what in the actual fuck?
Appropriate, yeah,
you, yeah.
Exactly. My thoughts.
Sandra Gail Ringwald was 30 years old when she went missing. Her drug habit cost about $200 a day, so she had to work very hard to support it. Her kind of calling card was she would steal cigarettes from cars that were delivering them to stores and then go and sell them to the stores herself. She was on a methadone program because she did want to get clean and she was trying to, but it wasn't helping her at the time stop her addiction. She had 2 children, 8 and 6 years old at the time she went missing. She wanted to be a part of her children's life, which is why she was doing the methadone program. She was picked up in a red Chevy truck and propositioned by Robert for oral sex. She said $40. He said, I'll make it $100 if you come to my place and I'll have you back by 4. She saw a butcher knife on the kitchen table as they were walking into his place. They had sexual intercourse for about 5 minutes. And it is noted that there was nothing unusual about it, which to me says nothing special.
Right. Nothing remarkable.
She put her clothes on and asked to use the phone. Robert didn't want her to use the phone. She came out. She went into the bathroom and came out about 10 minutes later after using. Robert was in his office. She needed to tell her pimp that she'd be back soon and she had the money that she owed him. So she asked Robert if she could use the phone book. Robert came up behind her while she was using the phone book, grabbed her left hand and began caressing it. Before she could stop him, he slipped a handcuff onto her left wrist. She went into fight mode real quick, and she fought him, punching, kicking, and screaming. He began to hit her back. She remembered the knife on the table and kind of retreated towards it. And as she was like scrapping with him, pretty much, she reached behind her, grabbed the knife, and slashed at his throat and cheek. Robert continued to attack her. Sandra blacked out, but when she regained consciousness, they were both outside. Robert grabbed the knife but passed out and fell on top of her because he was like bleeding so much is why he passed out, because she had like cut the throat already.
Atta girl,
yeah. She ran down the driveway off the property screaming, and she ran to the closest house, but no one answered. She smashed a window to get into the house and away from Robert, but she saw headlights coming down the road, and she hid in the bushes thinking maybe it was Robert. She saw 2 people in the car and noticed one was a woman. The car went down to the end of the road and then I guess made a U-turn and was coming back. As the car was coming back, she jumped out of the bushes towards the car and stopped the car to ask for help. She was almost naked, covered in blood. She had been stabbed in the abdomen and her guts were spilling out of her stomach as she was waving a butcher knife, asking these people for help. Can you imagine like being in the car? You know, that's scary. I wouldn't even blame them if they were like, you know, she had a knife and all.
Right.
The man driving asked her not to stab them, and she dropped the knife. He put her in the back seat, and they went to the hospital. As they were driving back past Robert's farm, Sandra pointed out to the woman in the car that if something happens to her and she doesn't make it, that's the guy who did this to her. Add a girl.
Yes. Yes.
She was losing so much blood, the doctors had to operate on her immediately. Robert also came into the hospital to get his wounds treated. A key was found in Robert's pocket that unlocked the handcuff that was still on Sandra Gale's wrist in the operating room. Sandra Gale woke...
All right.
Yeah, right? You would think.
Oh, no. Okay. All right.
You would think. Sandra Gale woke up Monday, March 24th. Dave the brother, asked Lisa to come to the farm for a little bit, help clean up all the blood and take care of Robert while he was recuperating. She initially said no, but eventually agreed when Dave convinced her by saying he was gonna like pay her and stuff. He told her Robert had just been stabbed by some hooker. When she arrived, Robert told her a different story, that Sandra had tried to steal his money and stabbed him. Dave never ended up paying her for looking after Robert. Robert was begging Lisa to tell him where Sandra lived too so he could finish the job.
It's terrifying.
Right. Robert was charged for this incident with attempted murder, even though his story was, oh, she was, robbing me. They're like, well, you did still try to kill her.
Right.
So he was charged with attempted murder. Again, these people have a lot of money, though, the Picktons. And Robert paid for a PI and a lawyer. Sandra Gale ended up being so intimidated of Robert that she didn't show up to court, and all charges were dropped.
Oh, my God. Say it ain't so.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It's crazy because here in the U.S., you can't drop criminal charge. Like, it's not the person who's charging you. It's, like, the state or the government.
The state, yeah.
So it's not like the person can drop it. But I guess it's different in Canada.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, that's why. I wonder if it might be different now, too. They may have changed that. Sandra was friends with all the other... This is one good thing that came of this, at least. Sandra was friends with all the working women in the downtown Eastside. So most of the women started to avoid Robert because she had spread what had happened to her, and I'm sure people can see that she's recovering too. Robert started paying other women and his brother to convince women from the downtown East Side to come to the Pickton farm. Sherry Irving was brought to the Pickton farm by Dave, who Robert offered a finder's fee to, so he started like paying people to bring these women to the farm. Sherry was never seen again after that. Sarah DeVries also went missing. After she went missing, they read her journal as part of the investigation, and she had been writing about the missing women. She was actually like a really eloquent poet. She said in the journal, "Am I next?" And she did end up becoming one of Robert's victims. So it's just so tragic.
Like chilling.
Yeah. Wayne Lang, who was one of Sarah DeVries' customers, had also like fallen in love with her, and he started a tip line and put up posters to find her when she went missing. Someone named Bill calls Wayne and said that the police wouldn't listen to him, but he tells Wayne that there's piles of women's clothing and stuff in Robert's trailer and all around the farm. He has an industrial meats grinder. He says that he was friends with Lisa, and this is where he's getting all the information, and that Lisa said she had a gut feeling that Robert is where the missing women were going. Bill Hillcox was his name, and he did go to the police. The police talked to him, but I guess he wasn't super credible because he had a substance abuse issue as well. He didn't have like the timing of everything laid out really well. So the police were like, well, we'll just go to Lisa. So they did go straight to Lisa, and Lisa lied and said that Bill Hillcox was lying.
Lisa.
And she said because she doesn't trust police. Which,
it's like, okay, like, we kind of get it.
But this is this is women are dying.
Right.
The police talked to Lisa. Lisa said that he's lying. The police didn't have a witness, so they couldn't search. Sarah's family started telling people the rumors about Robert because they heard it from Wayne, who heard it from Bill Hillcox. So pretty much this started spreading through the community, and more pressure was being put on law enforcement. Vancouver police did not want to work with other law enforcement agencies who were reaching out and trying to coordinate and work with them. They said, no, it's our jurisdiction. We'll take care of it. there is no serial killer. And this is when there were some like champions like lower down in the Vancouver Police Department like fighting to bring other agencies in and stuff, and the higher ups said we don't need to. So Andy Bellwood worked on the Pickton farm. I think he had gotten out of prison, and Robert offered him some odd jobs on the farm. Robert and Andy became quick friends, and one night they were hanging out, and Robert says they should get a hooker. Andy declines. Robert goes on to tell Andy what he does with hookers, and he told Andy that he picks them up by telling them he has drugs and money. And then he stands up, goes to the bed, and starts demonstrating on the bed what he does with hookers. And he's demonstrating like a doggy style sex position, and he's pretending to caress like an imaginary woman on her back and like her hair and stuff. And then he grabs this imaginary woman's left arm, pulls out handcuffs, and like puts the handcuff on this imaginary arm, then grabs the other one and does the same. Then he proceeds to demonstrate him strangling the woman as he says, "That's a good girl. Things are going to be okay." Yeah. He tells Andy that he takes them out to the barn, cuts them like his livestock, and feeds parts of them to the pigs. And then he takes the rest to the rendering plant. Andy was freaked out. Andy's like, I'm not into all that. He didn't even want to get a hooker, as Robert calls them. A few days later, Robert had Andy beat up, like to near death. And Andy asked, like, it was some of Robert's friends who were beating him up. And he's like, why are you guys doing this? And they told him because Robert said he was stealing his tools. So it seems like he realized he probably shouldn't have told someone else this and was trying to scare Andy into not saying anything.
Yeah.
Andy leaves the farm. He said he didn't realize Robert was an actual serial killer. And he did not go to the cops, but he got out of there. Lynn Ellingson had a substance abuse issue and started living on the farm. She would do some of the office work for Robert, and she was getting paid well for it, so which is why she stuck around. Robert brought Lynn with him to like lure sex workers, and at first she was hesitant, but then he used her drug addiction against her and offered to like buy her drugs for helping him lure women. And the sex workers were a lot more comfortable with a woman being in the car, and they would even ask Lynn, like, are you gonna be there? And she's like, yeah, I live at the farm, I'll be there too. So they felt more comfortable, and would come along with Lynn there. Robert got a particular woman to come home with him, and all three of them were hanging out for a little bit, and then Robert and the sex worker go into his room, and Lynn went into her own room and started using. A while later, Lynn thinks she hears a scream, and she walks towards Robert's room, but no one's in there. But as she's walking back to her own room, she sees a light in the slaughterhouse on in the middle of the night, which is odd because Robert's usually not out there in the middle of the night. So she goes to check it out. When she enters, she sees a woman hanging from the hook that he would hang the pigs from, and he was draining blood from her, also like he would the livestock. Robert catches Lynn standing there, makes her stand there and watch as the woman gets bled out, and then tells her if she ever says anything, she'll be right there beside the woman.
God.
It's like it's an absolute horror movie.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm like picturing. Like, what a monster.
So terrifying. The police are getting more and more pressure put on them. America's Most Wanted does an episode on what's going on. They offer a $100,000 reward. Police, get this, start looking at men with a history of violence towards women.
Interesting.
Yeah. Robert was someone on their list. But he was one of 40. There were protests going on at this point for the missing women. Serena Abbotsway went to one of those. And it's really sad because she ended up becoming one of Robert's victims. She disappears August 2001. So now we're about 20 years after he started, like, strolling the streets of downtown Eastside. Lynn is the only eyewitness of an actual murder. She was the one who saw the woman hanging from the hook. She leaves the farm, and she did tell a friend. The friend tells the police, but they said he wasn't credible because he was a drug addict and was having trouble, again, with the timing of the events. The police track Lynn down, and Lynn denies everything, which was actually because she was blackmailing Robert at the time. Robert starts asking friends to kill Lynn by injecting her with antifreeze so that they couldn't be caught because she uses needles anyways. So he's like, they're not going to test her. They'll just assume overdose. Which is interesting that that's something he would think of or tell anyone.
Yeah. I'm surprised he let her go to begin with, honestly.
I know, right? It's crazy. And then even as she's like blackmailing him too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she was too close to him.
Yeah. Or he just got like, he's getting too cocky and comfortable because he let Andy go and now her.
I do feel like he's slipping at this point, and he even says that once he is arrested. Yeah. The people he was asking to kill her refused, thank goodness. And then 11 more women would be murdered before he was caught. So if she did say something at that point, 11 more people would still be here. But also it's hard to like judge anyone in that situation because she has to be so fucking terrified too. They brought Robert in for an interview. Nothing came of it. He like even offered for them to come have a beer at his place, and they did, and they were like looking in the windows and stuff, but he didn't actually invite them into the trailer, and they found nothing that would permit a search warrant. So nothing came of that. The police do go through other possible suspects at this point. They started a task force, a project called Even Handed. The officer that interviewed Lynn initially, one thing that did stick with the officers when they interviewed Lynn is they were kind of trying to play like good cop with her, and they were like, it's okay, like we've seen autopsies and stuff, we know like how traumatizing that kind of thing can be, like just let us know what was going on. And she's like, no, nothing happened, but she did keep saying it was also yellow and gross, and they thought that was very strange for her to say because I guess like the fatty substance out of a body is yellow and gross, but it's not really something someone would say unless they saw it. So this particular this particular officer, it was like really sticking with him. He wasn't even working on this case anymore, but like off duty he went and like wanted to talk to Robert and do an interview with him, and Robert just told him that all these women are blackmailing him to get drugs, and everything they're saying is not true.
It's the drugs. What is up with him and drugs?
What is up with him and drugs? I wonder if his like mom had a weird thing against it or something.
Right. Always goes back to the weird mom issues.
Yeah. Katrina Murphy was hitchhiking after visiting her husband in prison. Robert picked her up, and she told Robert that her husband was in prison, and he said, oh, well, your husband won't miss you then. She, at this point, kind of got freaked out by that, for good reason, and she realized that there were no handles on the inside of the door to get out of the vehicle. They had like a predetermined spot where he was going to drop her off, and as they got there, he sped past it. She reaches into her purse, pulls out a pencil, and stabs him. And I have love her in all caps kind of written down right here. She jams her knuckles into his eyeballs. Love her. He stops the car. She jumps over him to open his door, and she hits the pavement face first and starts running. As she looks back, he's just standing by his car laughing, which is just so
psycho.
Yeah, dude. She runs to the nearest gas station. Police get there, take her statement.
No, say it ain't so.
And do nothing. Not only do they not do their work, they cannot even perform decent human tasks. They did not take her to the hospital. They don't take her home. They literally just leave her at this gas station, and she had to hitchhike home after this hitchhiking event. Some nice old man, thankfully, who was better than Robert, took her home.
Oh God. That is
crazy, dude. Okay, another sex worker was propositioned by Robert and agreed to $100 to go back to the farm with him. She said the smell in the vehicle she had asthma, and it caused an asthma attack. So she needed to get out of the vehicle. He punched her in the face and pushed her out of the car. And this, I guess, initially wasn't reported to the police, but she did report it later. Police are feeling more and more pressure as we go here. Someone who worked on the farm while it was Piggy's Palace got arrested and tipped the police off. He was kind of just trying to make some money, and he's like, can I be like an inside informant? And he's like, I can tell you about these people with like these drugs and this. And they're like, no, we don't need that. And he's like, well, I know someone who has illegal firearms. And they're like, oh, well, that's a good charge. Okay. And then he says it's Robert Pickton. And they're like, yeah, no, like we've been wanting to search that place. Let's go. So now they have a search warrant for the property. By the way, let's just point out that this is not the police doing a good job. Literally, this person is just like, hey, can I flip on someone and y'all will pay me or let me off the hook? Crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Just kind of wanted to point that out. But they have an hour for this search warrant because it's only for firearms. So they get there, they knock on the door. Robert comes out the other door because there's 2 doors, I guess, a front and a back door. And he sees them, slams the door, tries to lock himself in. It's a trailer, so they just ram the door. So they get in. They find many incriminating pieces of evidence while they're in there. They find multiple pairs of handcuffs, women's jewelry, missing women's IDs, and birth certificates, because I guess sex workers, because a lot of times they don't have anywhere to store that stuff, they just keep it on them, like their birth certificate.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Some of the stuff did have blood on it. There were lots of knives, an inhaler from a missing woman who was the woman with asthma, lots of women's clothing, syringes filled with antifreeze, lots of sex toys, an envelope of teeth. Ooh. Yes. They only had an hour to conduct this search, but there was enough evidence to file another. They did open a box during this first search as well. They opened a box that had a gun in it and noticed something odd about it. When they unwrapped the gun and got a good look at it, there was a dildo attached to the front of the gun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mean to laugh. It's, oh my goodness. Okay.
Definitely nervous laughter there. I feel
right.
I feel a little sick to my stomach, a little bit like crying and laughing all at the same time.
Right. Like, yeah, throwing up. Yeah.
My body doesn't know how to react to that. The gun was loaded. There were 5 bullets in it, and 1 bullet had been shot. They did also find DNA of a missing woman on the dildo as well. They don't know if it was actually used to murder someone or if it was used for intimidation purposes, but either way, absolutely fucking horrific.
Yeah, made of nightmares.
For sure. So they finally got a search warrant for the entire property. The search had to be super methodical because it was 14 acres, and the place was such a mess too that like in the slaughterhouse it took them 2 days to be able to get to the freezers in the back because they had to clean their way there pretty much and then sift through like every little bit of like everything that was everywhere because there's so much evidence.
Yeah.
And they also didn't want to cause any reason for lawyers to be able to dismiss any of the evidence as well, so they were being like super careful and methodical. Finally. They had to search through all of the soil on the property as well, which was a huge feat. I believe the search took 2 years.
Whoa.
Yeah. Some equipment in the slaughterhouse tested positive for human blood and DNA. In the slaughterhouse freezers, they found the remains of 3 women. They found 2 of the sets of remains. There were these like 5-gallon buckets, and in each bucket there was a skull that had been cut in half vertically, like the skull that was found in the slough in the beginning of the story, and then hands and feet in the buckets as well. And those were like the most identifiable as human pieces, so they think that that's why he kept those there, like he was going to do something else with those. And then they also found just a head in the freezer as well. So there was like the 2 buckets with the 2 sets of skull, hands and feet, and then another head. There was a jawbone also where the pigs were, so it is believed that he was feeding some of the remains to the pigs as well. They found evidence of 27 victims on the property, but it's suspected that there were more. None of the victims were whole. Like, a lot of them were just, like, DNA or, like, small, like, remains left.
Oh, man.
He disposed of the victims the way he would his animals. Identifiable remains would be buried or taken to the rendering plant. So I guess that's probably what he was doing with the buckets. It's thought he mixed in some human meat with the pig meat, like the ground meat. The level of contamination from this case is so far spread because there's the meat that people are eating. There's the soil that the bodies are buried in that's getting sold.
Oy vey.
The rendering plant makes like cosmetics and stuff. And yeah, so the level of contamination from this is like, I think there's a public safety like announcement that went out, but it's like, what can anyone do with that?
What can you do?
Right.
Right.
So horrific.
And that many, like you said, like 600 piggies died in that fire or whatever, like as it is. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. Robert was 51 years old when he was finally arrested, February 2002. When he was arrested, he refused to shower.
Come on, bro.
Right. Yeah. And he said he only wanted to take a bath. And he was like saying that his rights were being violated because they were only allowing him to take a shower, not a bath.
His rights?
Yeah. Go fuck your rights.
His rights?
Right.
Right.
They did have interviews with him, but he wasn't giving anything up in the interviews. So they put a cell plant in his cell, so an undercover cop, like as a cellmate. He befriended Robert by like hyping him up pretty much and just being like, oh, you're so fucking cool. You killed all those people, you know, just feeding his ego pretty much.
Yeah.
And you can actually find this like confession on YouTube, but Robert does end up confessing to the cell plant. The cell plant like asks him how many, and Robert like motions with his hands like a 5-0, and the cell plant's like, oh, like 5, and he's like, no, 5-0, and the guy's like 50. Like, I don't think that they were suspecting that many at all.
Wow.
And Robert told him that he disposed of the bodies at the rendering plant and that towards the end he got too sloppy, but he really wanted to make it an even 50. He said if he goes down, this I thought was very interesting, to the cell plant, he said, if I go down, I'm taking 15 others with me.
Ooh, that's creepy.
Yeah, so there's other people, it sounds like, who are also involved in at least some of these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And no one else was ever convicted in this. So, and I wonder
crazy.
about Dave,
and like was
the brother.
Yeah. I mean, he's already messed up from that poor little boy.
Right.
You know, like, so from the beginning, he's capable of doing things like that. So, and look at the mother.
Yeah.
Look at who they had as an example.
This whole family is so fucked.
Oh, man.
Except for Linda, who got the fuck out of there.
Right. I hope she's doing okay.
I think she lived a pretty happy life. Her children, like, went on to get, like, a doctorate, I think. And, like, I think Linda did well. Yeah.
Damn.
So he was supposed to be tried for 27, because that's how much evidence they found on the property, for 27 different murders. And the judge was nervous that if they did all of those in one trial, it would open up a possibility for a mistrial because there's so much evidence involved. So the judge split it into 6 and then 20 cases. So the first trial would have 6 and the second would have 20. He was found not guilty on 6 counts of first-degree murder on December 9th, 2007, but he was found guilty for 6 counts of second-degree murder. So I had to look up, like, what is the difference of first-degree and second-degree murder in Canada. And first-degree murder is planned and deliberate. So, yeah, I'm just not sure how you get to 27 or even 6. And
Without.
Do we just snap every time?
Yeah.
So
That's so bizarre.
I thought so. But he was sentenced December 11th. He was sentenced to 25 years, which is life in Canada, or at least it was at the time. The sentences do not, like, build up on either. They're not cumulative. So, like, 25 years was the max that he could get, with no possibility of parole. And then I have just a list of the victims that I just kind of want to read off real quick. And it's not like all the descriptions, it's just their names. The 6 that he was actually convicted for was Serena Abbotsway, Mona Lee Wilson, Andrea Jonesbury, Brenda Ann Wolfe, Georgia Faith Papin and Marnie Lee Ann Frey. And then the other ones that they found DNA for, but I don't think he was ever convicted of. He was just suspected, which I don't understand how that makes sense. And I'm also not sure why they never tried him for the additional 20.
Right.
But the names of those women were Jacqueline Michelle McDonnell, Diane Rosemary Rock, Heather Kathleen Bottomley, Jennifer Lynn Ferminger, Helen May Hallmark, Patricia Rose Johnson, Heather Gabriel Chinook, Tanya Hulk, Sherry Lee Irving, Igna Monique Hall, Tiffany Louise Drew, Sarah Jean DeVries, Cynthia Felix, Angela Rebecca Jardine, Diane Melnick, Jane Doe, Deborah Lynn Jones, Wendy Crawford, Carrie Lynn Koski, Andrea Faye Borhaven, and Kara Louise Ellis. But wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that one was a doozy.
Over all those years.
I know. 20 years.
Yeah.
2 years of a search on the property.
Wow.
And
It's just so crazy to think like we were like alive during most of this time, and it's just like while we were living our lives, these women were going missing, and like it's just so crazy. I don't know.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I didn't even think about it like that.
Yeah. So is he alive or did he die?
He very recently died. He died May 31st, 2024. Let's see. And I'm assuming.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know, right? He just died. Pickton was attacked by another prisoner.
There we
go.
go.
Martin Charest.
Some kind of karma.
He speared Pickton in the head with a broken broom-like handle. Pickton was airlifted to a hospital and put on life support. He died at the hospital from complications. Well, thank God he never got out.
Right. Oh, that'd be terrifying. It's sad that like Canada doesn't, like the max is 25 years. I feel like I remember my parents kind of like talking about things like that. Like,
Really?
Yeah. How it's just kind of a weird justice system situation and also terrifying.
Right. Like, I know, because he could have been out again, you know? And he's
Right.
rich. They probably still have a farm.
Ugh.
As of April 2024, the maximum determinate sentence in Canada is a life sentence with a 25-year parole ineligibility period. So yeah, it's still 25 years. That's wild, dude.
Damn.
Y'all need to get that, not
Yeah,
you specifically,
for
but Canada needs to
Right.
get that together. My goodness. I don't like that.
Yeah. Well, I am glad he is no longer with us.
Yeah, rot in peace.
Very disrespectfully, the utmost disrespect.
To the highest degree.
Man. Yeah, for sure. I also just keep thinking about that. Was it Sarah's diary who wrote like Am I Next?
Oh, yeah. Sarah DeVries, yeah.
That's just so ooh.
I know. And she had
It's crazy.
written a lot about the missing women too in her diary.
Damn.
Yeah, so chilling. And that's what those women were living with too, like wondering, am I going to be next? Because no one was doing shit to help them. It's so crazy. It's like they're still humans.
Yeah. Jeez. Well, that was an enthralling story, though. Oh, my goodness. I mean, we can do some Swifty
Little
stuff.
uplifting stuff. What do we got on this Swifty
Yeah,
docket?
I'm down for that. Well, I did want to talk about the whole piano glitch situation.
Okay.
Because there's been certain times that the piano has glitched.
Is it like when she would like mess up the lyrics to the surprise songs, but you could tell like she didn't actually mess it up?
Right. Like, because the piano itself is like a keyboard and like a piano shell. Right. And the first time something happened, the piano started playing by itself. And she's like, oh my gosh, this thing is haunted. And that was right before she announced Speak Now, Taylor's version.
Wait, I remember that. Yeah, okay. She's
Right.
like, do you guys
And
hear
then,
that?
I believe it. Yeah, and it was like playing. She's like, oh my gosh, is this thing haunted or something? And like people didn't really catch that it might be a little Easter egg for the soon to be release or announcement actually of Speak Now Taylor's version, right? And then the next time I have remembered it was either in Sydney or Melbourne, right before Tortured Poets was released and we didn't know what the vibe was. And remember, she was like playing and it was a synth sound. And it was like the beginning of Fortnite. It was like the beginning notes of Fortnite. And it's like a synth sound. Oh my God. Yeah. And then this past weekend,
was it Reputation?
When so she's wearing the blue Surprise Song dress, which she wears. It's like I feel like it's a callback to the Look What You Made Me Do music video when she's a zombie in the very beginning, which is also the dress from the Out of the Woods music video from 1989. But you hear her, like, her piano isn't working or something, because she starts to sing Getaway Car, which is Reputation. And a tech comes right up on the stage and they're kind of like doing some stuff, but what are they really doing? And like they open the lid and you hear this like hiss sound, which sounds exactly like the intro to Reputation on the Eras tour. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of debate online about this because some people are like, you guys, not everything's an Easter egg. That was just her laughing into the mic. And it's like,
well,
they
haven't been in this long enough. They just don't know.
Clearly. But I don't know. It's like whenever the piano malfunctions like that, it's like always been a hint to what's next. So,
and
I don't know, man.
I believe that she's going to get the recordings done before the Eras tour's over. And
for sure.
So we've got to be getting an announcement soon, I think. Did I say re-recording? So. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. Or like the announcement of or just like them all released by the time the Eras tour's over. Do you mean?
Yeah. Because I think she's going to use the Eras tour to like hype it up and stuff. So I feel like we've got to be getting an announcement soon. Also, I just have felt in my bones that we're getting something for Reputation in August. I don't know either the announcement or just no explanation. Which, it's hard to believe that she'll actually just drop it without, like, the pre-orders and stuff. But she did for Midnights, but that was a different time. Did I say Midnights? No, it was Folklore.
Folklore, right. And she did drop that whole other half of the Tortured Poets album, too, like the second part, without really saying anything.
That's true. And there were no pre-orders.
So, right. But I feel like, you have always been like, I think it's August, something for Reputation. And I'm starting to get there. I just want it now, but it's
fine. Is it going to be September, though? Like, why is no one talking about Alexa saying that? I guess because the source isn't really...
True, yeah.
But Alexa said
And it depends on how you ask Alexa, because when I asked her, she said it was like February. I was like, bitch, you are wrong. Because she said February 2024. I'm like, are you living now, Alexa? Like,
Alexa, what are you doing?
Are you here with us in the present? Right? She's probably like...
Alexa, play Taylor's version Reputation. If it's out there, play it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I can definitely see, like, the last show maybe in August, like how she kind of did for 1989, announcing it then. Dude, that's just going to be such a crazy moment. Yeah.
I cannot.
It's a fun year to be a Swiftie.
I feel like we're getting there.
Sure.
Like, I'm just so torn on, can Reputation really come before debut? Because I think you said it the other day, too, like, it's hard for me to imagine a world where we get Reputation and then debut, because we're just so hyped over Reputation that it has more hype. Both of them are going to be great, but just people are more excited about Reputation, so it makes more sense to do that one last. But also, it makes more sense to do debut on her birthday. Taylor Swift debuted on that day.
Like, it's perfect.
I've always thought like... August Reputation, December is debut.
It'll be fun. And I feel like debut will have like a really kind of special place in her heart because it's like her first album, you know.
It's when I fell in love with her too. Yeah. It's gonna have a special place in my heart.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, it's so exciting.
Man, yeah, it's a great year to be a Swiftie. I just don't know what we're gonna do when the re-records are done. We're gonna have to wait 2 years every time.
Oh my gosh, what? Yeah, what are we gonna do?
I'm gonna have to find a hobby or something.
Damn.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Clowning counts for not just Reputation, right? Or is it only Reputation specific?
Yeah. I feel like I first started hearing like clowning it was like last year, like before, maybe just like right around summertime last year, because we were clowning for 1989. So, and then I did tell Show, I'm like, we had already had like what we were wearing to the Eras tour, but I was like, dude, we should have dressed up as clowns.
Oh my God.
That would have been so funny.
I feel like I don't see any clowns.
Right. Like, I have not seen one clown.
That's a missed opportunity. Any clowns out there?
For sure.
If you're going to the Eras tour, we want to see your clown suits.
Like a red nose or something at
Oh
least.
my gosh,
like...
yeah. Dang. Well, we'll just have to go again.
Right. Exactly.
I still got fingers crossed for Miami. I don't know how.
Dude, Miami would be epic. Imagine hearing Florida in Miami.
Imagine not hearing it in Miami.
That makes me so emotional. Well, we have the Grady live stream.
True. Mm-hmm.
We'll see you later, clowns.